Recently, I've seen a picture floating around the internet of graves with cages over top of them, and personally, I've had a great time reading the theories surrounding this practice. And as much as I want to say the purpose was, in fact, to guard against zombies or vampires, the actual truth is much more mundane, but, in my opinion, just as creepy. During the 18th and 19th century, many businesses were booming, including one that we would be disgusted by today: grave robbing. And this was for a multitude of reasons. Rather it be that the dead were often buried with prized treasures that they carried during life, or the fact that medical schools would pay a lot of money for fresh corpses. But nonetheless, people had to start being really creative with how they would protect their dead. Whether that be shifts of friends or family assigned to guard their corpse, or, as we've seen in the photos making the rounds, caging their loved ones in. Many smaller communities would have to rely on the church, and they shared a cost of a mort safe that would often be built at the grave site due to the excessive weight. And I wish I could say that this problem was just in America, but it was everywhere. Across the pond in Scotland, the problem with grave robbing became so severe that when residents began taking steps to protect their dead, the robbers would often resort to murder just to get these fresh corpses. And then in 1828, two men in Edinburgh committed a series of murders just so they could supply a fresh set of cadavers to a local doctor at a nearby university. So then that raises the question, where did the story about zombies and vampires having to be locked away by a caged grave come from? Well, even though the true meaning of these caged graves isn't as exciting as the internet would cause you to believe, there is some merit behind the myth. During the Victorian age, it wasn't uncommon for people to have a much higher belief in the supernatural than we have today. This can easily be seen with the spread of legends and lore of notorious vampires like Vlad the Impaler or Mercy Brown. Back then, word did not travel nearly as fast as it does today, and so one myth had a way of taking on a life of its own, and before you knew it, you would have an entire community believing that vampires and zombies would be caged in the ground just to protect them. But even though these cages had a more mundane explanation, what about other unique burial practices? The one that always stands out to me are the safety coffins. You've probably seen these safety coffins in pictures and not realized it. A safety coffin is often described as a grave with a bell attached to the top of it. Cholera outbreaks were very common back in the 18th and the 19th centuries, and they not only left the impacted communities very ill, but with a very real fear of being buried alive. These outbreaks would cause severe diarrhea and dehydration, along with a terrible fever that would often render the sick unconscious, and that's when the risk of being buried alive was born. These coffins were most popular in 1892, and they would be equipped with bells that were housed above the ground, and then strings would be attached to the body's head, hands, and feet. The theory here was that if the bell rang, the cemetery watchman would insert a tube into the coffin and pump air in using bellows. He would do this until the person could be excavated from the grave. However, this had a dark side. Due to the process of natural decay, a swelling corpse would often activate the bells, and so the stories of zombies attempting to break from their coffins rose when the coffins would be exhumed and the body would still be dead. Also, I want to mention that despite the popular use of these safety coffins, there's no official record of them actually saving anyone. So, what do you guys think? Are the stories of zombies and vampires being imprisoned by a cage true? Or is the truth really as simple as stopping grave robbers? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below because I really want to hear your theories on this one. Also, if you guys haven't already, be sure to check out the podcast. We are on every major outlet and new episodes drop every Wednesday and Friday. But with that being said, I think we're going to have to add the stories about caged graves and safety coffins to our never-ending, but are always growing Tales from the Dark.